This video is a response to and a resource for dealing with a strain of Christianity that has come about in the last few years, or maybe has started to resurface. I can't keep wasting time having this conversation more times than I've already had it. The shortened version you see on screen is available to download for free for everyone via the link in the description. Let's start by making a distinction between good or decent Christians and what we're calling here cattle Christians. Up until a few years ago, we communicated regularly with Christians interested in communication. Christians with individual understandings of and relationships with the Christian God. Christians who could coexist with other beliefs. Christians with insights, valuable practical insights, beyond Christianity good and non-Christianity bad, and Christians with a well-developed sense of self-awareness and critical thinking. Or in other words, Christians with the capacity to contend with doubt or not knowing in a sophisticated fashion, not doubling down on the most basic binary form of dogma. And I don't know where these Christians went, but I'm sure they're still out there, and I hope they're doing well. And if you're a Christian, and what's described in this video, these behaviors, don't apply to you, then it doesn't apply to you. Because the behaviors in this playbook extend well beyond Christianity. I guarantee you'll be able to align the behaviors discussed here with other religions, ideologies, groups, and so on. And I want to make that distinction clear because the people these behaviors do apply to want you to believe this distinction does not exist. And they want you to believe the distinction does not exist because the distinction makes them easier to identify and deal with. They want you to identify with them so you can take the hit instead of them. The first important thing to note about cattle Christians is they are fundamentalists. There is no Bible study, there is just Bible. There is no God in your life, there is just God in life. And this fundamentalist interpretation influences the way they conduct themselves with other people. People of other beliefs, even Christians with different interpretations. They're like robots or ants. They operate on a binary. So cattle Christians can't communicate. They cannot believe other spiritualities or answers to the big questions can exist. If a belief or an answer is not Christian God, then it is a problem and it needs to be dealt with. And the second part of this is they are not allowed to question. And this restriction creates difficulties for them, not to mention other people, because they are unable to develop a deeper understanding of their own faith. If it's not written on the page, then it doesn't just not make sense to them, but also it is incorrect. It's blasphemous. It's wrong, morally. And that restriction makes them unable to engage with people outside that cattle Christian binary. It makes them unwilling to reason with or compromise with anything that is not Christian, but worse, it makes them unable to. They become rigid. This avenue of peace and coexistence gets shut off from them. And this is a problem because it forces them into escalating conflicts with people who are not them. It's useful to look at different belief systems, and especially spiritual belief systems, as life engines. Systems that move you forward and can carry you through hard times. When at its core it's functioning, the cattle Christian engine is perhaps the most effective because it operates under the assumption God is the answer to everything. That makes dealing with the tough questions, or any questions, easy because the answer is always God. Your answer is always there and it is always right. However, when it doesn't work, when that assumption is even mildly threatened, the consequences are devastating. Because you go from having the answer to everything to having the answers to nothing and zero ability to work out those answers for yourself because you have been trained not to ask these questions, not to develop the skills to work them out for yourself. This is like an extreme case of mimetic or spiritual symbiosis, or more realistically, parasitism. When your only avenue to deal with a problem that your one answer doesn't solve is to double down on that one answer, you're in a bad spot. And this is why cattle Christians are so aggressive and invasive. It is understandable to defend yourself when you are attacked. It's a different story when you feel attacked by another belief's existence. Because, see, I'm sure they don't understand what they do or why they do it. But they're in a situation alternatives are not allowed. And for them, in fact, alternatives are dangerous because they have nothing else and they don't have the skills to develop anything else. So knowing other people think differently is not just an offense to them, which it is, but it's also a threat to them. Because if their basic assumption is undermined in any fashion, or even could be undermined, they are screwed. So they don't have the option of keeping to themselves. They must, for their mental and emotional well being, do something. And because cattle Christians are still Christian, their first level is an attempt at conversion. However, to convert, one needs to persuade. And persuasion requires nuance, flexibility, compromise, etc. All abilities, concessions, or flourishes cattle Christians are unwilling to and unable to partake in. And you'll know you're dealing with a cattle Christian because their conversion efforts all come down to assertions. Every statement out of their mouth boils down to Christianity good because Christianity good, not Christianity bad because not Christianity bad. There's never that personal understanding, that individual experience, that human touch. So, of course, these conversion attempts go nowhere. They are utterly ineffective because all they're saying is you wrong, me right. And that stance, it's ineffective no matter what belief system you're using it with, but it's a stance or an approach you can take if you can back it up in any way. However, cattle Christians can't because the justification or the evidence is built into the assertion. Christianity good because Christianity good. So, what happens when this inevitably doesn't work outside the confines of this strain, this cult of Christianity? Well, they can't convert you by convincing you, but they also cannot permit you to continue believing something other than Christianity, because that is a not just an offense, but also a threat to their basic assumption, which they need, so they escalate. I learned this personally on a smaller scale. I have been advised by people who have learned this personally on a larger, more serious scale. And if you haven't learned this personally, you can look on the news, you can look on the internet, you can look in history books, and witness people learning this on larger, more serious scales. If they can't convert you with persuasion, then they need to defeat you, beat you into submission, or coerce you into silence because your existence is a threat to them. From their point of view, you are a threat to them. And that's trouble for them because there are lots and lots of yous in the world. That's probably why they act the way they do, why they're so invasive. There's never a time they don't feel threatened. And I'm sure you can see the way this modus operandi lives in all sorts of other ideologies. This is not unique to cattle Christians at all. Modern atheists operate the exact same way. Any whiff a modern fundamentalist radicalized atheist gets of spirituality in another person, they need to do something about it. Modern or radical, or is it atheism plus? The obnoxious form of atheism is the yin to cattle Christianity's yang. They're the same thing, at least in terms of behavior and binary. The only thing different about atheists is their binary is more suited to common consensus. Or in other words, this video is not about atheists only because they are less rowdy and less invasive, only because generally more people agree with them. Or if not statistically, then in popular assumption. So they don't feel so threatened they need to relive the late 2000s, early 2010s, and be really obnoxious at all times. These sorts of people, or ideologies or religions that operate in this cattle Christian fashion, when suitably agitated or motivated, put themselves in no-win situations. They have no other option. And when they lose-lose alone, they group up and lose-lose together. Now, we have notes for a section riffing on the behaviors of herd mentality, but we'll save that for another video, both for brevity and because cattle Christianity, and again, other belief systems like it, are too rigid for the trickier forms of herd mentality. For example, a political group will operate basically the same way a cattle Christian or a cattle Christian-like religion will in groups, but the political group at least has the wiggle room to try to be tricky, to draw out the passive aggression before it gets into active aggression. Religious groups that operate on this yes-no binary don't have that wiggle room and therefore are not that tricky. The extent of their trickiness boils down to stating this good, not this bad, in as many ways as they can before they get fed up enough they get active aggressive. And this is where it ends, the playbook ends, because once the dust settles and they step out of the ashes, if they step out of the ashes, what do they do next? They haven't learned anything. They go right back to square one and do the exact same entire thing with a different group. But to close out properly, we will slip in some SOA beliefs, our beliefs. Question everything, including the people who tell you to question everything. No answer is complete, no text is perfect, no human is infallible. You can believe in something with all your heart, 99%, but you need to focus most of your attention on that 1% of doubt. One, so you can develop the skills to deal with doubt, so you don't need to attack everybody you see, invade people, but also so you can use that doubt to grow, to get closer to your answer. Because there isn't one total answer to everything. There are many different sorts of answers, all suited to many different sorts of people, and the most you can do with your humble little life is try to get closer to your answer. And your answer will always be changing because you aren't the same person today you were yesterday, and you should be thankful for that. Be thankful your existence isn't an eternal stagnation. And that's also what makes coexistence possible. You can despise people you disagree with. I certainly do. But you don't need to go hunting for people whose vibes you can harsh to make yourself feel better about your own belief system. You feel more comfortable with your answer by doubting your answer. The less you believe in what you believe in, the harder you'll dig to figure out whether or not you should believe in it, and if you don't believe in what you believe in or shouldn't, then finding what you should believe in. That's the process. Doubt is not the threat, it's the answer. It's the fun. It's the joy. How validating must it feel for a Christian to have a bad day, bad string of days, doubt their faith, and then find the answer to that question both in the Bible and in their experience of life? On the page and in experience. You aren't gifted that validation by doubling down, you're gifted it by letting go and allowing it to come to you. Or by letting go of the wheel so Jesus can take it. And then a final point about that indescribable level familiar to spiritually oriented people. You can reason and explore and examine all day and all night and still reach a level that goes beyond words, that goes beyond sense, enters that holy realm, that place where lines cease to be straight and become circular or squiggly or not lines at all. Unfortunately, we as a species are too humble and too limited to understand that level in the ways higher beings would. But you don't deal with that space by locking in one ultimate totalizing answer, because then you get into cattle Christian space, at which point that becomes the answer to everything, and it's not. I don't think that's even the answer to these instances you run into this space. These are the moments you acknowledge your limitations. There are things out there you are incapable of knowing. However, if you are a good person of faith, you don't stop there. You don't apply a totalizing answer band-aid, and you don't say, well, I just can't know anything. These are the moments you commit yourself to doing anything and everything you can. If you believe in your God or your force or your answer, you study as much as you can within your human limitations on your level. I think that's what you're supposed to do. You may not be able to answer that one question or explain that one thing, but you can locate it by studying everything around it. For example, maybe you feel an emotion that you can't describe with words. However, you can describe the circumstances in which you felt it. In fact, within Christianity, don't they have a word for this? These moments that you understand or feel God on this higher level? What do these meetups and stories do? Maybe you can't put that feeling perfectly into words, but you can describe the moment in which you felt it and thereby develop a better understanding of and relationship with your God. Other strains of Christianity have ways of dealing with this, with these moments. What's your excuse? You were given limitations so you can better understand and appreciate eternity. You were given doubt so you could appreciate faith. Faith without doubt isn't faith. These are some alternative viewpoints to chew on. Ease off the reins and stop crowding me. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.